So welcome, good morning. Welcome to a discussion on empowering women in the workplace. And today we're specifically focusing on providing a voice for women in hospitality, academia, and the nonprofit industries. So as I'm sure you're hearing in various conferences and events these months, we did have to pivot from our originally planned in-person interactive panel discussion that we were going to do in March to this new now virtual conversation. And I think what's awesome is that we're able to reach a broader audience this way. And we also look forward to gathering together in person in the future. So first, what we'll do is introduce ourselves to you so that you know who's up here on camera. And rather than a traditional bio resume format, each of these wonderful women will give you a glimpse into their journey. So feel free to ask questions in the Q&A tab. If you kind of hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see Q&A there. And we'll keep an eye. And then also to interact in the chat. And that's where we can all do our active listening. And since we can't see you, that's your way of smiling at us or at nodding or nudging each other and leaning into the stories. So feel free to be as active as you like over there in the chat, and we'll keep an eye there too. So I'll kick us off with my bio slide real fast. So my parents immigrated here from Europe and came to Palo Alto, and I spent my childhood traveling and camping, playing soccer, skiing, and essentially a lot of family friend time. And then I went to undergrad up in Oregon at the University of Oregon. So yes, I am a duck. And Tanya, next. After Oregon, I moved to Switzerland for 3 years and worked at first at the Derby Hotel up in Davos, and then at the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. Came back, worked at Stanford, got my master's at the University of San Francisco, loving that green and yellow. Went over to Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture. And followed my boss from Accenture to Primitive Logic, where we often won best places to work. And then we were acquired by Logic 2020 last fall. So very exciting path. Next. And for me, it's all about lifelong learning. So never stop learning. I'm so blessed to be on this Commission of Status of Women as a past president. There you'll see a picture of me meeting the retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, which was just a huge highlight for me. And then of course, my dog and travel and family and friends. There you go, next.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me on this panel, Anisha. I hope to tell you just a quick little bit about myself. So my name is Toni Moos, and I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. My father was born in Trinidad as well, and my mother's from Guyana in South America, and they met in Jamaica in college. My father was a diplomat for the government of Trinidad, so we traveled quite a bit. The falls on your left are the Kaieteur Falls in Guyana, the tallest single drop fall in the world. From Guyana, we moved to Geneva, where my father was finishing his PhD, and then on to Brazil, and then London before moving here to New Jersey for me to attend high school, at which time my father retired from the diplomatic corps. So I made it to the West Coast because I came out to Stanford having known nothing about it. Having not grown up in this country, you don't get as much information about colleges as you would otherwise. So I just wanted to try something new, came out here, and at Stanford, I met my husband, Kevin, and we got married right before I started medical school in Pittsburgh. So we drove back to Pittsburgh for me to do my 4 years there. And he said, can we just go back to the Bay Area? So we came back here for residency. And I did my residency at actually San Jose Hospital at that time, which is affiliated with Stanford. So We were able to make it back here. And while there, while back here, I was introduced to San Jose City College as I did a rotation as a resident, and I am now the medical director of the Student Health Center there. That's how I became familiar with it. I love to bake and cook, and I love to run, box, and read. On the right, that picture you see there of all the people in orange, that's my mother's side of the family in Guyana. We go back every 3, 4, 5 years for reunions. I have over 70 first cousins that live there as well as around the world. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, I have 4 children, forgot to mention, and ages 17, 17, 19, and 21, and just do a lot of stuff as a family. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jayne Battey, and it is great to be here today. And thanks for the opportunity to even have to put this together. It took me on a road down memory lane. So when I got this question to do an introduction, I thought, how to go about this? Who am I these days? And I guess I'll just share a little bit about the journey. So I grew up in Connecticut on the East Coast. I met my husband, no joke, when I was 12 years old. And we didn't get married right away, but it wasn't, we got married very young in 1981. We have 3 kids, and now I have 2 grandchildren. And if you look at my bubbles up here, I tried to sort of do these to size. So I guess I have been in California for almost 40 years, and I really identify as a Californian. I am a wife, a mother, a Gigi, a grandmother now. And I come from a big family. There are 5 kids. My mom and dad were married over 6 years. I'm very close with them. So being part of that family community, and really family has always been at the heart of what has pulled me and pulled my center. But I've also been an entrepreneur. So I founded a company called Essex Environmental, and then I founded the company I run now called Miramar Farms, which does leadership development work. We are actually currently closed to visitors to the farm because of the pandemic, but we carry on with Zoom meetings and with coaching online. And I also spent about 8 years with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. So my background is always in environment and energy in terms of my professional life. But like Toni, I am a baker for sure. I am a farmer out feeding the chickens and dealing with apple tree issues even early this morning. And so I guess what I would say about myself is that I love having lots of roles as a woman, and being able to be both in the business world, in the community world, and also my center really being the family. And I guess if you look, there's a few blank dots up here of different sizes. I'll talk more about this as we go, but there are always new opportunities calling, and already I'm starting to wonder which of these new dots will blossom into new roles that I'll take on in the future. I guess I'll just wrap up with saying I'm also the vice chair right now of the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is part of the state water board system. And in the days of climate change and extreme fires, it's become a very important part of my work and my life, and it's my first time as a regulator, so that's been interesting as well. So thanks.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamillah Moore. Thank you as well for the opportunity to be here with all of you at this amazing conference and with these other extraordinary women on our panel. I'm really just excited to be a member of the team. I guess I will share a bit of my background and tell you a little bit of my journey. I am actually a native Californian, born and raised, started out in Southern California, grew up partially in Los Angeles, the other half in Northern California. I have to say that my trajectory into my current position was really not planned, but being someone who's always been very strongly involved in their community, and wanting to help others, I guess it kind of seems somewhat natural. Currently, I am the president of Cañada College, which is in Redwood City, and it's one of the 3 colleges within the San Mateo County Community College District. I started out on a path of communication studies and wanting to do more in public relations. I started out at California State University, Sacramento. So I am a former Hornet. Then from there, I made my way over to the University of San Francisco and was able to enter into the School of Education, where I learned a great deal about international and multicultural education and really kind of the Jesuit foundation of service and service learning. And I consider myself a servant leader. From there, I went into the California legislature as a staffer, Senate fellow and staffer to Senator Teresa Hughes, which you can see pictured there. She was at the time one of 2 African-American females in the California State Senate. The other African-American female was Diane Watson. I had the wonderful opportunity not only to serve as her Senate fellow, but also to work on education policy, which helped me to understand the importance of being heard and being seen and voting. And as Congressman John Lewis would say, getting into good trouble during my time there. Thoroughly enjoyed that experience and really learned firsthand the importance of advocacy, but the importance of making sure that voices are heard. I also, at my time, when I left state service as a legislative staffer, I went over to the California Community Colleges System office as the Vice Chancellor for External Affairs and Governmental Relations. So then I was advocating for 114 campuses at the time. Now I think we have 115 as a liaison between the legislature, the statewide chancellor, and the Board of Governors. Also there, I had the wonderful opportunity to serve as the interim superintendent president of Compton and helped with their organization, but also helped them to sustain their accreditation. After leaving Compton and continuing that work, I then moved into higher education leadership as the former president of Los Angeles City College, the former chancellor of Ventura County Community College District, and then over to Cañada College, where I currently sit. Family is very important to me. I have my mother's high school photo, as you will see there, next to Senator Teresa Hughes's. My mother graduated from private Catholic high school out of Mississippi, which is where her family is from, so that's where I'm from as well. At the age of 16, she graduated early. As my mother would say to me, her brother got a car when he graduated high school, she got luggage, so she moved to California. She took that hit. So she was an entrepreneur, owned her own business, was very successful. So I've been enjoying my time at Cañada College, and one of the things that we are doing is making sure that students have access to college and that individuals are getting trained in the workforce. I also, lastly, would like to close with, I am currently the vice chair for the California Student Aid Commission, CSAT. So one of the other things I love to do in my time at public service is to ensure that Californians, all Californians, have access to financial aid and resources to go to college. And it's been an extraordinarily wonderful and very rewarding experience. So thank you once again for the opportunity to be here with all of you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Georgia Farooq. I am really super honored to be here. I wanted to thank the San Mateo County Commission on the Status of Women for persevering and hosting this incredible virtual conference. And again, so honored to be on the panel with these women. And thank you, Anisha, for putting this together meticulously for us. Again, my name is Georgia Farooq. I'm Executive Director of Thrive, which is the Alliance of Nonprofits for all of San Mateo County. We have an incredible staff of 9 and a board of 8, and we're always looking for great new board members, so definitely keep that in mind as you're watching today. I live in Redwood City with my husband Armahan and my son Kayan, who you'll see some pictures of. Now he has a curly head of hair. This PowerPoint slide was put together before March, and he has grown since then. He will be 16 months old next week. So lots happening in this household right now. So I'm not a PowerPoint artist, but I tried to represent kind of via this slide what's important to me, importance of family, huge, importance of exploration, importance of mentors, which I know we're going to talk about throughout the day, throughout the morning, importance of networks and importance of advocacy. So I often say that I fell into the nonprofit sector, as I think many of us do. So when I was an undergraduate at Wellesley College, which is an all-women's institution, I gravitated towards poetry, the arts, education. And right after college, kind of being pretty naive as I was, I discovered that this was the things that I loved, arts and education, were massively underfunded. And there was a whole sector for them, which no one had really explicitly told me. And this was called the nonprofit sector, which kind of, for better or for worse, picks up the pieces of, where government and the private sector fall short. And so this kind of led me to understand that the nonprofit sector was my professional home. And so it's been a journey in terms of my career path, and I think I'll reference some of that journey later, but there are so many mentors and networks that help me in that journey, and that's why it's so important to me now to figure out ways that everyone can have access to those kinds of incredible mentors and networks. So it's pretty impossible for me to talk about women's empowerment without thinking about my grandmother, who actually passed away just this March, end of March, at age 93, she was a true matriarch for her family. She had 20 grandchildren, 20 great-grandchildren before she passed. And she was the mother of 8, and she decided herself, she said she was in Greece, and they decided to leave their business behind, leave everything, as a mother of 8 with her husband and her mother, and they came first to Dorchester, Massachusetts, and settled in Massachusetts, where most of my first cousins are. And she was really a pioneer. A lot of people said, "Why are you doing this?" And she wanted a new life for her family, and she's just really the glue for our family. I have to say that, she was an immigrant. She became a U.S. citizen. And she always remarked on how proud she was of the country and how grateful she was to people that helped her really become a part of the community. Her door was always open, which is something that I remember, her hospitality, her generosity. One time they found a homeless man in one of the beds after eating a meal at their table because they just had a spirit of generosity. And this is something that I try to think about and carry forward with me. In terms of just kind of some of the professional journey, back in Massachusetts, I led a nonprofit center for almost 7 years, and I was a founding board member of something called the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, which was our statewide alliance of nonprofits. I hope I got a bit of my grandmother's sense of adventure, hopped in my Prius, moved to the West Coast to join my now husband, and here we are. I think for many of us, our personal and professional lives are kind of blending together more than ever, and so that's certainly true for me as I'm trying to balance working from home with motherhood. So I will say, just a couple of pictures here. My child Can has become kind of a fashion plate for my ideologies a little bit, and for my friends. So you can see on the bottom right corner, that was a lovely I'm a Feminist baby, was a lovely onesie made for us by my Boston friends. And Power to the Polls really echoes the work we're doing in voter engagement. It was given to me by actually Thrive members nonprofit CEO. And then this is just a picture of us promoting the census. We have less than 40 days left, so I encourage everyone, my PSA is encourage everyone, if you haven't yet, complete the census, and encourage friends and neighbors to complete the census. We have till September 30th.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Dinwiddie, and I'm not actually a panelist. I'm here in a different role. You'll see me logged in twice here on my screen, and then I'm also logged in as my consultancy, Creative Sandbox Solutions. You can see, if you're looking at the windows, you can see my hand waving around over a piece of paper, and that is my consultancy, Creative Sandbox Solutions. My role here today is actually to capture what the panelists say in visual notes as a graphic recorder. What I do, my job is with my consultancy, is I take the board, B-O-R-E-D, out of board meetings. And right now, I take the board out of virtual boardrooms using play and live drawn visuals, live drawn graphics. And I do a lot of virtual facilitation, doing things like workshops for leadership development and team development, innovation, new product development, creativity, things like that. And I use all play-based methods, applied improvisation, graphic facilitation, art and music, Lego serious play. Those are some of the methodologies that I use. I lead virtual creativity retreats, and I teach people how to lead non-boring virtual meetings in public workshops and also bespoke trainings for companies. You can see my cat there in the bottom corner as well. And I like to play the ukulele. But today my role is to capture the proceedings in live drawn graphics. And if at any point you would like to watch what I'm doing, you can pin my video by clicking on my video and clicking on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner and click on pin video, and then you can watch what I'm doing up close. So that's me.
Wonderful. So before we actually jump into further discussion, we're going to pull up a poll real quick for everybody. So get your fingers ready, your mice is ready for the audience. And the question will be, do you believe that your gender has limited your career choices or goals? And there will be, I want to say it's going to be 3 responses when the poll comes up. The first response will be absolutely no question. The second, haven't noticed or thought about it. And the third response would be nope, not at all. So Tanya, if you're pulling up the poll.
It's up. It's been up. I never closed the first one, so people have already been answering it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So in fact, I think probably everyone's answered it now. Should I end it and share the results?
Sure. Great. So if everybody can see the poll results, it looks like 64% of the attendees are saying absolutely no question. So I'm going to kick us off into the stories, and all of you will start seeing these soaring Wonder Woman capes behind our panelists as they share their responses. And I'll start with Toni. So you are both in medicine and in academia. So what's awesome is that you joined us on Tuesday during the STEM session too. And what guidance can you provide women looking at medicine as it relates to academia? So is it possible to have your cake and eat it too? Meaning, how hard is it to balance a career in medicine and family life?
Yes, so I'll give you a little background about how I came to be where I am today. So as I said previously, I was a resident, and as a resident, you go to outside clinics to get more clinical experience with patients, and you're working with either private clinics or clinics such as Palo Alto Medical Foundation. So in this instance, I was a resident at San Jose City College, and that was 20 years ago when I was finishing up my residency, and the medical director at that time was retiring. So I thought it would be wonderful to be in medicine in an academic setting. So going into the classrooms, for example, teaching in their human sexuality classes. So I do a lot of sex ed with the students, birth control counseling, a lot of STD information that I give out. And I also work with the pre-med students and work on them in terms of advice, guidance, mentoring, leadership, and so on. And because of that role and my interest in sexually transmitted infections, my children's high school has a STEM week every year where they invite outside speakers to speak about their careers. And one of the board members approached me and said, would you like to come and speak to one of the classes about what you do? Well, what I do is talk about sex. So I approached the principal and just made sure I had permission. And she said, you know, we kind of need parental consent. So how about you talk about antibiotics and you know, what infections those can work towards. So that's what I did. And lo and behold, my son came into the class because he wanted to listen in. And just as he walked in, the principal walked in behind him. And one of the students asked, can you tell us about chlamydia and why antibiotics work against it? And I thought, the door is open. I can go free now. So the talk segued into that. But what it made me realize is not only do I love teaching, working with residents who come through our clinic, and I love the clinical work that I do working with students and staff and faculty, but mostly with the students is what I do. But I also love the interaction of me learning more and then being able to interact and give that information to others. So I think the world of medicine and academia is exciting because it's always changing. There's always new information, there's always new medications. And I think having women in academia as it relates to the medical field is even more important because studies historically have left women out of the realm of, okay, these medications work, but most of the study subjects were men. So now with about 28% of women in academic medicine, women are being included in more studies. So yes, this medication helps men and these are the side effects, but it also helps women and their side effects are different or their response to the medication is different. So there's a whole myriad of different research that people in academic medicine can do. There's the clinical aspect, and then there's also the teaching aspect. So I think depending on what you want to do, there's so many opportunities to interact from a research perspective, from a teaching perspective, from a clinical perspective. And now with MD, PhD programs in play, you know, the training is there that opens the door for so many things. There's bioengineering, pharmacogenetics, meaning how do our genes affect our response to medicine? And so I think the women's voices have to be heard as it pertains to research, to clinical realm of medicine and to teaching, because we add a different perspective. But then when we take the lead, we are also able to do studies that will enhance the health of women overall. And one of the aspects that's currently being left out is women of color. So a lot of women of color aren't included in these studies. And so by having more women included and by opening the diversity of for the people going into these fields, we ultimately will all benefit. So that's what I would say in terms of medicine and academics. In terms of work-life integration, you know, we rarely ask men that question, but as we see, especially with the pandemic, women are not only working from home more, but they also have childcare that they're trying to balance. And I'm seeing more and more articles and studies coming out that a lot more women are losing their jobs because of it. The pay wage inequality is even larger now than it has been. So by having women involved and by even medicine has changed, because when I first started medical school, it was such a man's world. They didn't take into account women who are having children in residency. And now the rules have actually changed where you have to have a certain number of hours off. So I think the integration is getting easier and easier because women are sharing positions. Palo Alto Medical Foundation often has one physician working 2 days and the other working 3, and they switch. So they're splitting that in order to balance their, at-home life a little better. And the flexibility is getting more and more, it's definitely more and more there for women to be able to do it. So I really appreciate that we're slowly working towards work-life integration that's benefiting women and therefore society as a whole.
Thanks, Toni. What's fun for me is, even though I've known you about 23 years, I feel like I always learn something new. So I really appreciate it.
You didn't know I love talking about sex, but there you go.
No, I love it. I think it was really good. Jayne, what is your secret on career progression and achievement? And then as you look forward, knowing the different challenges and opportunities we face, how is your approach to continued growth and accomplishment shifting?
Thanks, Anisha. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. And it's such an unusual time when we're facing so many challenges with COVID and climate and all that is happening in our society. So thinking about career progression and how we do the work that's most important to us is, I think it's a time to be pretty thoughtful. So I guess I want to say a couple things about this, and I didn't say this in my bio, but I want to make sure I put it out there. I am one of 5 kids. I'm also the first woman in my family to go to college, ever. And when I got on a plane to come from the East Coast to the West Coast at age 22, it was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. So, it's been quite a journey from there. And you're, as we were preparing for this meeting today, it made me think about some of those things and sort of what has been my path. And a couple things I'd say. First of all, I have been very, very focused. So I knew from a very young age what was important to me, which was really a combination of taking care of the planet and taking care of people. And so my work in the environmental field has been a passion since I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up right on the Connecticut River, which is a beautiful place if you ever get a chance to go there. And when I came to California, it was so clear that there was, this state in a huge place of growth and development, and, the ability to really stay focused. And I have to say, I am one of those people that did not focus on the financial side of this. I really was doing work that I loved, and then the rewards came later. So anyway, I think the focus is one thing, that having that passion. I think the second thing, and it's something that right now, particularly for women, I think we really need to lean into, which is this idea of why not me? Somebody has to lead. Somebody has to get that next job, even if it is, and by the way, environmental and energy field, very male dominated, although that's shifting. But this idea, and I have to say, I have a son who is now a geneticist, but when he was about 17, 18, he applied for a scholarship, like from the Economist magazine. And his dad and I were like, okay, how's this okay. And we were talking to him about it, and he said, somebody has to win, why not me? And I'm sure I know where he got that from, but it's also, I'm sure, like Tanya and others, we're always learning from our kids and our families as well. So this idea of why not me, and I will tell you all that the world really needs you. So get out there and be bold. And then the last thing that I'll mention that I think has been part of my flexibility and adaptability to different roles and allowed me to explore new things is being persistent, and even the word that my family would use is scrappy. So, it's like, give me, a couple paper clips and a rubber band and a seed, and I'm going to make a farm out of it. Like, whatever it is. But, and again, this so relates to the times that we're in now, that using the resources that we have. I mean, how many of us have been making meals out of whatever's in our house because we're not going to the grocery store again? That idea of saying, what are the resources that you have available? and then make something from that for yourself, for your community, for the world. That is the other thing that I think is really an essential skill. So I guess I'm just going to wrap up with one thought, which is that if you got a piece of paper someplace, grab it and make 3 little circles and intersect them like the Olympics. So one circle says, what is your passion? The other circle says, what are you good at? And the third circle says, where is there a need or a market? And if you can get to that intersection for yourself and for what the world needs, that makes it pretty sweet. So there you go.
I love it. And you kicked it off with it's a time to be thoughtful, but I do like the 3 circles too, so kind of linking that together. It's wonderful. Then to you, what do you see as the responsibility of senior leaders regarding diversity?
Is that for me, Anisha? I couldn't hear you. Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for that question. Well, I think ideally we should all pursue diversity because it's obviously the right thing to do. And I in looking at that question, I think the responsibility to me is very clear, because without a diverse workforce, I just don't see myself. So I just don't see that I would be present or visible there. You know, I think that in my background and my role currently as a leader, diverse workforce and a campus that thrives in an inclusive culture, to me, leads to a better ability to serve students and a better ability to serve customers and a higher level of innovation and a stronger brand, a stronger level of support. So when we look at the issue of the responsibility of senior leaders regarding diversity, there are a few things that come to mind, and that is, first and foremost, diversity needs to be a priority in the organization. So wherever I'm at, for me, it's important that diversity be one of our priorities. It's part of the mission, it's part of the values. And so it has to definitely be something that is valued within the institution. I think also too, to ensure there is an environment to embrace and support diversity. So often we hear that people will come into an environment that is supposed to be diverse, or it has a level of diversity, but then there's not a level of support there. And so then you can get into feelings of isolation, and that's not what you want. So you want to make sure that you have an environment that embraces and supports diversity. I think also too, as a leader, you want to ensure that you have the tools to support and implement the diversity. And what I'm getting at is that, you know, supporting and pursuing a diverse environment is paramount, but do you have the resources to sustain it? So for example, if you're at an institution, if you're going to pursue wanting your faculty to be diverse, you want to make sure that they have all the resources to be successful when they come to the job, and that there are tools and strategies to support them. The same for our students. Many students who want to come into a diverse environment, a diverse campus, we want to make sure that their needs are supported. Diversity is a very broad term, but for me, it really is operationally an environment that not only supports people of different backgrounds and genders, but it's an environment that really sees diversity as a primary goal, a primary vision for all that we do, because the world in which our students will inherit when they graduate, or the world in which our faculty are teaching and researching, is incredibly diverse. So if we want to sustain that global diverse dynamic and really be able to participate in what I call the global playing field, we really have to be a diverse environment, but we have to support it, we have to embrace it, and we have to sustain it, and we have to make sure there are resources for it. So I think any leader needs to put that as a part of their priorities, but they also have to walk the walk, and they have to make sure that there are resources to not only implement it, but sustain it.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. And especially implementing and sustaining. I think, you know, keeping that in mind, so it's not just a one and done.
Exactly.
Georgia, let's round us out. So as you oversee and direct the Alliance of Nonprofits, how do you continue to support equal parity and create a cohesive coalition? You're on mute.
Thanks for that question, Anisha. So Thrive, I think embedded in its values are really this notion of inclusivity. I will say that a few years back when all of us were kind of grappling November 2016 with a really difficult environment nationally, Thrive, we kind of launched a new policy and advocacy arm to help people really in a nonpartisan setting be able to become involved. So we launched it 5 issue areas: arts and culture, environment and sustainability, immigrant and workers' rights, basic needs and safety net. And there's always one that escapes me at the moment, and it's children and education, which is actually one of our biggest umbrellas. And what we found, as our amazing director of advocacy and education, Petra Sultan, and I kind of brainstormed how we wanted to reflect the values in this program. We said, this is going to be inclusive of everyone. We are going to hold these meetings at times when moms can make them, when working people can make them. We are going to try to be as inclusive as possible. We are not going to restrict these meetings to members. So we opened up the umbrella, and inclusivity is incredibly important to us. That's something we continue to work on. Also, kind of the cross-sector nature, we bring nonprofits, government, business, and philanthropy to the same table. We partner regionally with our partners in Santa Clara County and elsewhere. I think also listening and being humble and kind of trying to meet the moment. So we know that our leadership doesn't fully represent the community we serve, and we're trying to meet that moment. We had been in conversation prior to the very high-profile George Floyd murder. We had been in conversation about with our partners about launching a racial justice hub, a DEI resource hub for nonprofits, but that was something that we hadn't actualized. And after that, we put out a statement of solidarity, standing together for racial justice, and we wanted to hold ourselves accountable. Since then, we've been fortunate to have an intern from Stanford, who is our diversity, equity, and inclusion intern, who is doing a deep dive for our organization. We realized we had to do the work at home first before we launched this. So interviews with staff, interview with board members, figuring out how we can lead better in this moment. That is another way we're trying to be, I think, inclusive in this moment. But let's talk a little bit about just compensation and kind of parity in terms of leadership positions in the workforce as well. So let's face it, people do not come to the nonprofit sector for the compensation at all. You all know that. They come for mission, they join because they want to be change agents. But that doesn't mean that compensation isn't important. So we shouldn't just say, hey, you know what, you're in the nonprofit sector, why don't you just, sacrifice yourself completely and not care about these things. 73% of the nonprofit workforce is women, according to recent data cited by Network for Good. So that's something to celebrate, and I think it reflects kind of the spirit of women for sure, the spirit of service. But that doesn't tell the full story. In a study just a few years ago, GuideStar found that U.S. nonprofits with annual budgets of more than $50 million, out of those nonprofits, just 18% had a female CEO. So the nonprofit story clearly reflects the larger story. And Nonprofit Quarterly commented on this phenomenon, and they summarize it by saying, the richer the organization, the less gender diversified its leadership. So this should just give us pause. I think the way we try to fix those situations, the way we try to address this at Thrive is through data, is through mentors, and through advocacy. We rely on data. We subscribe to a nonprofit compensation report that is not available to everyone, that we provide to nonprofits. We provide that information so they can benchmark. Mentoring is incredibly important. Advocacy is important. Just want to mention a small story that I think illustrates the importance of mentors. When I was graduating from business school, I got a really exciting opportunity. I got a call and I was offered a position to lead the Center for Nonprofit Management at a college. And I was fresh out of business school and thrilled. So I called of course I was just gonna say yes. I called my professor, a woman who headed up the public and nonprofit management program at Boston University's business school. And she said, well, have you looked at the data, the compensation? She's like, you should be asking for more. And it had not even occurred to me. And I was just thrilled. I was like, hey, what a great position. I love the mission. And if she hadn't said those words, I have so many moments in time where one sentence, one piece of advice, you should ask for more. And that, I think the lesson it didn't, set me on a path to having an incredible salary in the future. But what it did was it taught me to research and to really not be afraid to add your voice and to ask and to advocate for yourself. And so it was an incredible story, and I have had so many mentors, and that's why it's so important for me to pay it forward. I think everybody should have access to those kinds of mentors and opportunities.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I want us just to keep going. If we could do this for a couple hours, I'm like looking at the time thinking like, oh my gosh, how do we cover all this cool stuff? I'm going to just jump us straight over into a couple of the questions that we see coming in, both in the chat and to the panelists and in the Q&A. So I'll bounce around a little bit. And for the panelists, just feel free, whoever wants to jump in and respond, however you want to do it. You can put your hand up and respond, or just jump right in. And then at the tail end, just for our attendees to know, we'll close out the session with our call to action slide. So just a couple things that we've put together as a team that we thought we would leave you with. So I want to do Q&A first so we don't miss those, and then we'll close out with our call to action. So the first question that I see here from Lynn is, everyone appears to agree diversity is important, yet inclusion seems elusive. For diversity to have an impact, a space needs to be made for the different perspectives to be heard and included. How can we make that space in leadership and on boards? And how do women of color become advocates on boards for those voices?
I'll be happy to jump in on that one. I think it's a great question. Part of leadership is allowing for those spaces to take place. I know some of the things we're doing at Cañada College, especially our country still is in the middle of a lot of racial strife right now. And so what we are doing is, because it is such a value for us to have a safe environment for both staff and student voices to be heard, we've created forums on critical conversations on race and the issues of diversity and inclusion, because inclusion means different things and different definitions to different folks. But first and foremost, we had to allow for a space for people to come in and listen, and also to be heard, and to provide different venues, whether they're breakout rooms or whether they're campus-wide reads and research, because we are an institution of higher learning, about how to learn more and begin to look at ways in which we can support one another. I think also too, one of the other panelists talked about being in the level of grace and being human. We are also in the middle of a pandemic, and so allowing people to have that space to feel okay where there's a lot of anxiety. I'll also get over to really quickly the issue about women of color and women of color on boards. I'm going to go back to what some of our other panelists mentioned, the importance of mentors. Had it not been for a strong mentor in my own background, I would not have even known to even advocate or look at boards. I would encourage all of the viewers here who are in this room with us that if there is a board or an organization you want to be connected to, find out as much as you can, but then seek out someone who you would like to be a mentor. I have folks that I am interacting with as mentees, but I would not have made it this far had I not had mentors and people I could talk to and ask questions. So first and foremost, as a leader, it's our responsibility to give you that space in which to have those conversations and to feel safe to answer, to ask questions and to get your questions answered. I think secondly, we have to lead by example, making ourselves available and being willing to give our time and to help individuals move to other spaces or put you in contact with people who we think can help grow you and you can learn more from. I think as a good public servant, understanding that and making that a responsibility and reaching out to other women of color that you see that you may want to have a stronger connection with, or maybe connected to boards and fields that you see that you can participate in. Thank you.
Wow, that was really thorough. I love it. Good response. And, I think having the safe space and leading by example, so important for all of us just to keep doing for the people around us, but, our community in general. Thank you. Another question that I see here in the Q&A is from Rosillo, and she writes, I'm soon to graduate with a master's degree in social work. I would like to know from your perspective, what and how can I best help Hispanic and Latina women in our population? I am a Latin woman, and I know there are many challenges that our Hispanic population face in our community, but I would like to hear your perspective and how I could make a difference. So whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in for a minute and maybe just get the conversation started. But I think the conversation about mentorship is so important, and particularly these days for women to support each other and to open doors and provide some guidance. And so I think, that there's so much need out there right now. And so identifying where you have a passion, because I guess part of it is that, the work is really hard and heartbreaking. And so identifying where you're passionate will give you the tenacity to stick with it, but to, literally go and find the organizations that you're interested in and, be bold yourself. But then also look at the boards, see who's on them, email these people, email particularly the women, and ask them if they'll connect with you. I'm living on the edge of this CZU fire complex right now, and there's a community in Pescadero and South that is in such significant need, and there are so many people that want to help. And so even though we're faced with news every day about so many bad things happening, which is absolutely true, there are a lot of people that want to help. So I think being bold and reaching out and finding your passion and really being persistent and ask for help, people want to give it.
I can try to answer that question as well. So I do encourage you to look at nonprofits that are providing kind of frontline assistance. Samaritan House is incredible in terms of basic needs and safety net. Organizations like Upward Scholars do amazing work with the Latino community, where they're helping with accessibility, for education, for language. So we're happy to try to connect you with nonprofit organizations. So that's definitely another way you can get involved and connected. I will say one more thing, that I also sit on the Vulnerable Communities Committee for the County of San Mateo as they think about recovery initiative for COVID. And they have brought in panelists and some from the Latino community. And what we're finding is that neighbors are helping neighbors in terms of filling out forms to access benefits. It's actually people who have already lost their jobs that are doing the work of helping their neighbors. It's incredible. And some of them, even though things are translated into Spanish or other languages, the reading level is still, it's too high, or it's a complicated form. And it's just amazing to me that the people that are still helping out are the people that are most affected themselves. And that's just something for us to keep in mind.
I would also add, first of all, congratulations on getting your master's under this dynamic and this modality. I'm sure that was not easy. I'd be more than happy to connect you with some of the organizations that we are working with that are looking into and supporting the Latino community. We also work with Upward Scholars at Cañada College. And also too, for those of you who may not be aware, because we are in a pandemic and there's such a high need, there is a drive-through food bank every Friday of College of San Mateo. We serve 900 to 1,000 families from from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at College of San Mateo. And I also work that food bank. So that's why I wanted to make sure I shared it with anyone who may be listening, who may be in need. But there are several organizations that we can connect you with. I think we've all in this box been mentors ourselves, are currently mentors, and we would be more than happy to connect you to folks, because as a social worker, I can tell you, your skill set and your degree is in high demand. So congratulations.
Absolutely, hear, hear. We're going to pull up our call to action slide, and our panelists will each talk to one of the 4 that we pulled together, because I just think it's so important for you to walk away with a couple things top of mind. And we started the session, in case you joined us right at the beginning or early, with the music from Milk, Not Staying Quiet Anymore. And we all need to find and use our voices for good. So we thought this is helpful, something you can walk away with. The 4 that we listed are vote, community, self-care, and advocate for justice. And Jamillah will kick us off with vote.
Thank you for that. First of all, let me just say, it's so important that we vote. I mean, this is really the one clear way to make your voice heard and to make it count, and that is to vote. I'd have to say that voting is extremely important. I actually have a son who's 17, who's going to be 18 at the time of the election, and he's really excited about voting, and I am excited that he's excited about voting. So it's so important that you get out and vote, but that you also educate yourself on the issues. Our country right now, our state, our country is really in a very dynamic, very interesting, unique, and in some cases, frightening time. So if you do not vote, you really don't get an opportunity to participate in how we move forward. And it's so important that you have your voice at the table and that you can begin to advocate. So please get connected to voting. You can always go online, and the DMV, you can register to vote online. It's really, really easy, especially in the state of California. So I would encourage you to definitely become involved in the process, and to become involved in the process, you have to participate in voting. And I can say that the one demographic that really needs to vote is that 18 to 24-year-old. It's so important. And they sometimes think that it is not. And I'm just going to make a pitch to all of those 18 to 24-year-olds that are out there. Please, please, please vote. And do not go with the feeling that it doesn't count. It does count. It is very important. We need you there. We need your voice at the table. And voting is the best way to do that. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Lean into that, everybody. Self-care, Jayne.
I'm going to be quick here. I have 2 things for you, because I've been spending a lot of time with coaching clients recently on this topic. I've got 2 things for you. The number 1 stress people are experiencing these days is related to isolation. So I know we're all being safe, but I want you to think about safe socializing. So get online, connect with family, connect with friends, have a cocktail, whatever it is, but don't just stay alone, and do those distance walks, but get out there and don't just get too isolated. The second thing I heard recently from my husband actually was this great idea for a list. So take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle of it. On one side, put things that are happening that I cannot control. And then on the other side, put a list of things that are happening that I could control. Take the one side of the list that you can't control and rip it up, throw it away, and then just focus on the things that you can control and use it as a bit of a checklist for yourself. So that's my advice on self-care.
I love it. And I was going to say you should burn that side, but like we don't want any other fires. So no burning. Recycle. Community, Georgia.
Definitely. I'm going to use my final minute to just plug, really supporting the nonprofit sector as a way that can really help you and nourish you as well. So get involved in your community, volunteer. You can still volunteer. You can volunteer virtually, and as Jamillah was mentioning, you can volunteer in person at food banks, and then give locally. So we haven't talked about donating, but financially support organizations. Encourage your neighbors to financially support local organizations, especially now with wildfires. There's so many to give to. Think about becoming a board member. So there's so many opportunities to connect with your neighbors and form new relationships, thrive as a resource for you during this time, and complete your census. Once again, complete your census.
And Toni, you want to round us out?
I sure will. Prior to COVID and prior to George Floyd's murder, you know, all these things obviously were not COVID. Racial injustice, social injustice, gender injustice, environmental injustice, these things have always been happening, but we hopefully are now more aware and cognizant of their presence and should want to do more. I never thought I would call into as many city council meetings as I have been, written as many letters as I now am doing, postcarding, you know, marching and doing everything to feel as if I'm doing something to affect change. And I think we all have to step up and lean in and do as much as we can to ensure that there is justice for everyone. As Jamillah said, we're all humans. We all deserve to be respected. We all deserve to have the right to walk down the street without fear. We all deserve to drive in our cars without concern of being pulled over, assaulted, and killed. And so I think it's our obligation to do as much as we can to affect change. So you should call into your city council. Hold your police department accountable. So I'll tell this quick snippet. I know we're almost out of time. My 21-year-old has been followed 3 times in the last 10 days by the police. And the first time was the day he'd gotten a car that had been sent up from Southern California. He bought a used car. And he called us, he called my husband, who is white, and said, "Dad, there's a police following me. What should I do?" The police pulled, so my husband said, "Drive home." The police pulled in behind him, saw my husband, and then kept driving. And my husband called the police department and said, "Who is the officer going down this street right now? Tell him to come back." That's a call I think a Black man would never have made. So my husband, as a white man, had the privilege to do it. So what I want is Black men to want to make that call as well, to feel safe making that call as well. So what I'm asking is for everyone to do your part to make sure that we all feel equally respected and that we all have the same rights, because we all deserve to have it.
Yes. And because this session is all about empowering each other, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of you panelists, for sharing, Melissa for capturing all of our comments visually. Big thank you. And for our attendees for joining. I really appreciate it. And I know we're right over time, so I'm going to close us out, but wish you all well.